Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. It's 4:01. So if we can call the special legal committee meeting to order. We have a few items on our agenda. Maya, could we have a roll call, please?
Counselor Stubbs?
Here.
Counselor Peterson? Counselor Perry? Counselor Perry, are you online? Counselor Foster?
Here.
At this point, we do not have a quorum.
We might have to give a few minutes.
And we think Counselor Perry is calling in. So if you all don't mind, we will wait. Is everybody texting? Yeah, thank you. One.
Madam Chair, if we are not capable of having the meeting, these two items will be moved on to the full council agenda. Hopefully we can discuss, debate, and determine that, but between the mayor and I, we will assure that both of these items will be placed on the agenda for consideration by the full council.
Thank you. That's fine. But, what?
I haven't heard
You texted it?
This is Amalia. There is a telephone number.
Hello? Mr. Miley, is that you?
Yes, Mike's here.
Okay, we're just waiting for our last counselor to get online.
Sure.
Hi, this is Scott McKittrick with Souter Miller. I'm just checking to make sure you can see and hear me.
We can hear you, Mr. McKendrick.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry we don't have a quorum until we have one more person attend, so
Hello?
give us for the delay.
No problem.
Can y'all hear me now?
Yes.
Wonderful. I don't know what's happening. So now I've got you. I'm so sorry. I'm late.
It's okay.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. We do have a quorum with Counselor Perry joining us and Counselor Peterson we haven't seen yet. So, but we do have a quorum. Thank you all. Like I say, this is a special meeting of our legal committee for Thursday, April 1st, 2021. I haven't had a joke played on me. This has not been a funny day. I'm sorry. So, anyway, it was April Fool's Day.
4:05, and I'm just calling in, so April Fools.
Thanks. Thanks a lot. We've had a roll call. Could I have a motion to approve the agenda for today, please?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to
Please.
approve the agenda for today.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Could I also get a motion on the minutes from the March 25th regular legal committee meeting?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the March 25th, 2021 Roswell Legal Committee meeting as provided.
Thank you. And a second, did I hear? Thank you. Any discussion or questions about the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign? Oh. Then the minutes are approved then unanimously. Thank you. Our first item on our special agenda is the Municipal Landfill Unit 5 awarding. Mr. Nahar?
Madam Chair, Committee, good afternoon. Here to consider recommending to City Council the award of ITB-21-009 Municipal Landfill Unit 5A construction to G8 Services of Albuquerque. And if you have your handout, that amount would be $3,596,785.60, which does include GRT. As you know, we're in need of having constructed landfill unit 5A. We advertised bids March 7th. We opened up bids this past Monday. There was only one bid. The good thing about it is it's J&H Services. It does a lot of work for the city of Roswell. In fact, they're the ones that built Unit 4 that we're in right now. So Souter Miller, Mr. McKittrick's on the line, and myself have both reviewed the bids. This is a responsive bid, and we recommend award.
Thank you.
Stand for any questions. Also have Juan Fuentes for any financial considerations, and Abraham Chaparro from the landfill.
Thank you. Mr. McKittrick, I'll turn to you first. Is there anything you'd like to add?
No, ma'am. I think the bid looks good. I would have liked to see more, but I think this is a good responsive bid, and I have faith that the contractor can get the work done in a timely manner.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Are there any questions for Mr. McKittrick?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I just need a clarification. It was sort of hard for me to hear. Is the amount from the submitted bid $3,595,556.30 as listed on the abstract, or was it another amount?
Councilor Perry, it's another amount. That amount was from the bid, and then after the bids were reviewed, there was a small math error. So the amount is $3,596,785.60.
Okay. All right. I apologize. I heard a different number, and I just want a clarification that I didn't hear. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other comments on this proposal?
Mine is, I just have a clarification. So the $3,596,785.60, is it, the actual handout I have shows 3,335. Now, do we add one of the alternatives with that alternate bid?
Negative, that's the base bid,
That's the base bid
and then you add the tax.
and the tax, okay.
And then if you can see that in, you have this handout, Councilor Foster?
Yeah.
Okay, so you'll see that base bid, $3,596,785.60, which includes the GRT.
Okay.
Which is a
Now I see
substantial
the
amount.
GRT on that. All right, well, looking at the front page, I didn't see that, so that's where I was trying to figure out where that came from. All right.
Thank you. And are there any other questions of the committee? Or anyone else?
No, ma'am.
Thank you. Hearing none, then I'll entertain a motion on ITB 21009.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to send to full council to accept the award of construction contract for Roswell Municipal Landfill Unit 5A construction, project ITB 21009 to J&H Services, Inc. of Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Let me ask a question. Are we awarding or we're not negotiating? Okay, we're awarding.
This is a bid that we're awarding the
Okay,
project.
Thank you, I'm sorry. We have a motion now and a second. Any further discussion, questions, comments? I think we're all anxious to get this going. Thank you. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries, so this will be on the council agenda next week. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, committee.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is the telecommunication tower lease. We have discussed this a couple different times, and I think maybe we've come to a conclusion. Scott, you want to tell us about it?
I will. Afternoon. So I won't belabor the details with what we've already talked about. Basically what we did to bring back this lease today was put it more or less into our normal format, although because there are so many things that are peculiar to the communications world, you'll see it's not exactly our format, but as close as we could get and include the terms that they needed. The main things that you guys asked for last week to change were in paragraph 3, B, where we were talking about CPI increases, so that language has been added for CPI-U or 3%, whichever is greater annually. And then in 3C, also the auditing of financial records has been added.
Thank
And I
you.
believe the other one was in 38 for termination. I added D to add our normal termination language that the city can terminate with a council majority vote and a 180-day notice. Did I miss anything?
No, I would just add one
You
small
can check, I
thing.
apologize, I cannot, as I'm looking through here, I have on page number 11, I go from 27, 28, 29, 31, 32. I'm missing 30.
Okay.
Okay, we'll correct that.
Yeah,
And so what is 30 in there supposed to be?
I think it's a numbering error, that's all.
Just numbering, okay.
Yes, sir.
And so if somebody can clarify again which one you put the portion in where it can go before council for termination. I see it now. Thank you. I've got it. 38. All right. Sorry.
So I was going to add, we did turn this around pretty fast, so I apologize for any small errors like that one we just caught. The other one that I wanted to point out was in the rent section. Tenant shall pay landlord initial monthly rent of $1,020 and no cents monthly, $12,240 and no cents annually. That's in the rent, just adding monthly and annually to clarify those numbers. And again, that was, that was my bad, I left it out.
I did catch it, though. Okay, any other questions or comments? I have.
Madam Chair, I'm
Yes,
sorry.
No, go right ahead.
I guess I will just say I appreciate the work that the staff has gone into it. I'm sorry for being hard-headed. I say that tongue-in-cheek. I do appreciate the work they put into this. I do realize even after looking at it, it does have to look different just because we're dealing with the different. It's not a cookie cutter. We're dealing with something of this magnitude on a daily basis. I appreciate the work of working with them to get those areas of clarification changed that I've requested. I still wish it wasn't such a long lease, but I think that as I'm looking through and seeing what's been added with termination, I feel much more comfortable with the concept of what we have here.
Well, thank you for that comment. I have a question.
Yes.
Thank you. First of all, on I think it's the first page of the lease term, which is number 2, and it says in the second sentence, this lease will automatically renew for 7 additional 5-year terms. Can we do that?
Yes.
So we won't see this lease again for 35 years?
Unless, well, for 40 because it's 5 years.
40.
5 years, yes.
Including this?
Right, and that is one of the stipulations that Gravity Pad has to have that long lease, and I'll let Mr. Miley, who's on the phone, talk a little bit more about that, and he'll address the termination issue, I think. But yes, from our point of view, we can do long leases legally, but it becomes a policy question about whether you want to do such a long lease. That's your field and not mine.
Before I turn to Mr. Miley, may I ask you, what's the difference then?
Between a straight 40 and a,
Yes.
Basically because we don't have we can't change it, but I think that the Gravity Pad has the option to not renew if they want to. They could terminate it on any of these 5-year intervals, but we do not have that option, although it's been added now that we could terminate it by a vote of the governing body.
Right.
But that, if I understand it, Mr. Miley, that's his language, so he might be able to explain a little better, but my understanding is they do it in the 5-year tranches like that to be able to pull out at some point, if they don't want to go for 4 years.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Miley, please. Go ahead.
Yeah. This is Mike. To be honest, the difference between automatic renewals and 5-year increments and just a set, 40-year lease or whatever, it's really negligible. It's pretty much the same thing. Because I'll tell you why. Because there's language in there discussing the manner in which the parties can terminate. That's already set forth in the lease. So whether the terms renew automatically in 5-year increments or it's one term, some jurisdictions require that it's this way in renewal increments rather than a set term longer than X amount of years. But essentially operates the same way. That's a good question that you have because it is very similar. There is a component in there that talks about whether we would want to not renew at one of these 5-year renewal dates, along with other renewal or termination rights. But the quick answer is that it's pretty much the same. And if that makes sense, I just wanted to touch on the term and the termination and renewal issue. I think that's the final remaining point from our perspective as the lease sits now. Unless there were any other questions, I can touch on that.
Thank you. I have one more question. Let me.
Sure.
On the next page, still under number 3, rent B, where it does say it will increase annually, effective on the anniversary date, with the increase of an amount equal to the change in the CPIU or 3%, whichever is greater. Is it understood that that's compounded?
It's,
Sure. Yeah, so it's meant to be either a 3% annual escalator or CPI. So CPI is a posted number, whichever is higher. Yes, it's meant to be an escalator at that rate. Does that answer your question?
Yes, I guess I'm curious as to whether the word compounded needs to be in there or not.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a good point. Actually, I haven't seen that word. That might be from your end of the lease. I don't know from your version. We don't usually use the word compounded.
I'll leave it to the lawyers whether that makes any difference, but it's actually not in our normal language.
Right.
No, and I don't think it matters because the way it's written right now, that's how it would operate because it would increase by 3%, and then the next year, it would increase by, the previous year would increase by 3%, and so the 3% increase is built into each new renewal. So yes, as I read it right now, it would compound, but for the sake of clarity, if you would like us to put in there compound, we could.
I would just assume, I don't know how, the rest of the committee is opposed to that or has any feeling on it one way or the other.
Because,
Madam Chair, I guess for me, as I read the language, and if I understood everything from what I just heard, this would be the language that we would normally utilize. So I would be comfortable with the reading as it is unless the committee determined they'd like to add that, and I would have no problem if needed to be.
You have no problem either way? Is that what you said?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Counselor Foster? A comment?
And my question, and I was trying to find it, is if at any time the tenant decides to quit the agreement or vacate the agreement, does it require them to remove the towers that they placed? What I don't want to happen is they leave and then suddenly the city has to take the towers down.
There.
yes, and I don't have.
Yeah, so this is Mike from Gravity Pad. That language, I believe, is in there. It's in almost all of our agreements. It says, we have to return the property to its previously unimproved state and remove our equipment upon termination. I believe it's in there. It's a long lease, but if it's not, we always add that. So I think I saw it in there, though. Let's see if I can find it.
Yeah, okay, I've got it here.
21.
Yeah, so on page 4 at the top, at the expiration or termination of this agreement and upon written demand by landlord at landlord's sole discretion, tenant shall, at tenant's sole cost and expense, forthwith and with all due diligence, remove any and all improvements made by tenant and restore the premises to its former condition.
Thank you. That's the one condition that scared me, was if I couldn't find that one, then I didn't want to leave a bill for the city.
It's in there.
All right.
Are there any other questions or comments?
None from me.
Thank you, Counselor Perry. Mr. Miley, any other thoughts from you?
Sure. So, I just thank you to everyone for reviewing this, because I know this is a little bit outside of the normal course with the telecom arrangement, and the community's, I appreciate the efforts of getting, some of these clauses that we need in there because of our niche specific business, and kind of making it work with your standard format. So, thank you for that. So, as the lease sits right now, the draft in front of us right now, it works for us, except for the Section 38B that was added last week. And this kind of goes back to the term length issue with respect to, the right to terminate within 90 days notice. Essentially, that eliminates the long-term, the right to a longer term that we need in order to be able to build it. So we're happy to continue to accept the clause that says if we were to have a breach and fail to cure that breach, for example, if we didn't pay the rent 1 month or something like that and didn't cure it, then we would be subject to a termination on short notice. However, if there's just a right to for the committee at any point to vote to terminate on 90 days notice at any time during the 40 years, excuse me, unfortunately, that doesn't work for our model, and I'll explain why. It's because, again, of the upfront costs required to build the tower on our end. We need to know that we're going to realize some sort of return on that investment or be able to operate for a long time, and on top of that, we need to be able to provide that security to the individual operators. If we have AT&T, T-Mobile, and Verizon here at the moment. So for them to, reconfigure their network or order new equipment, temporary equipment in the meantime, deploy the team to get that up there, change the site around, it's a significant investment on their part. They have several months of work, several $100,000 worth of work each in order for this change to be made. If they are told that that could be terminated at any point, unfortunately, they would look elsewhere. They wouldn't agree to that. And then from our perspective as well, because we have the upfront capital building the tower. So I guess the best way to describe it is there's the lease component, obviously, where we're paying you the monthly rent, of course, but there's also another component of this contract where we have to go out and there's a construction component, right? We have to build it. And we don't get paid to build it after the towers are complete. We realize our compensation through the monthly rent that we receive after it's built. So if it could be terminated essentially 90 days after it's built, we would have just kind of gone through all that and never be able to operate or collect rent to justify the construction. So I don't know if I explained that from our perspective and from the operator's perspective why that has to be that way, but I'm happy to discuss it further if you like, if that's something else we need to talk about. So my other version is the lease works for us except for that section. Madam Chair.
Yes, Counselor Perry.
I'd like to ask Scott or maybe one of the other staff members there, currently under the terms and conditions of the lease that we have with these carriers that are currently on the tower, are those leases that are on the tower with those carriers right now, are they 40-year leases or are they 5 years with guaranteed extensions up to 40 years, or what do we currently have with these carriers?
So, little history, because we've had some heads up that this was coming for several years. All three of the carriers have gone through new leases in the time frame since we knew that we were going to be taking the tower down at some point. So all of those leases that we're currently in are either 5-year leases or they're on their last extension of a 5-year option. So intentionally, we ended them all because we knew we were coming to this. But no, none of them are 40 years, and because, like I said, because we had several years' notice, we knew we would not have done that.
So on the, and I don't know if you were on staff at the time or who necessarily was, if it was during Jennifer's time or Mr. Ibarra's time there, but when these towers were put on the water tower, whatever they're called, whatever the equipment that they put there, how long were the terms when they originally took leases? Do you know by chance?
Yeah, I think typically they were 5-year terms with, 2 to 3 extensions on them, so up to 15, 20 years.
Okay. Were they guaranteed extensions, or how did that work?
If my memory serves me correctly, they were our typical language, so they were mutual agreement.
Okay. So before they were able to do business on a 15 to 20 year lease, but now all of a sudden something has changed that now requires them to be able to have 40-year. I guess that's where I'm just having trouble understanding why now we have to double the amount, because the explanation I just heard from the gentleman was that these companies have to put significant funding into this being done. They've got to be able to see their return as well. If we were able to do that with a 20-year lease before, why is that doubled now?
If I can answer, this is Mike, sorry. So a couple of small details that are different. In this case, we're building 2 new towers from scratch. And so I represent Gravity Pad, which is a tower construction company. So there's the upfront capital cost to build with 2 new towers from scratch, whereas I believe previously the operators were sort of just latched on to the water tower that you guys already had. So they didn't have to pay that upfront cost to build 2 new towers and then recover it, which is one difference. And the other difference here is if they have to come down from that water tower, regardless, in the next several months, which I believe is the case, they're starting from scratch, and they need to get back on some tower in some neck of the woods close to there in the future. But once they're starting from scratch and doing new RF analysis and site AC analysis and determining where they want to go, they would be then comparing, other locations to that location, because they have the same cost to come down off of one, go back up on a new one. Would it go to that same location, or would it go something down the road maybe that could provide the same network coverage? And so the costs are factored into that as well. I think another part of your question was about the 15 to 20 year versus the 40. So there's a big difference between a lease that can be terminated within 90 days and a 20-year versus a 40-year. So I think that gets factored in as well. If that helps.
I guess for me, just, and I think I don't want to take everyone's time and being a fussle by any means. I recognize and all, but I think a couple of things that I just want to be recognized is whenever these companies came to us, however many X amount of years ago, they were starting from scratch as well. I hear what you're saying, that they were put on a leg of a water tower. But I'm assuming, I don't know, Scott, but I don't go out there and look at this too often, but I would dare say that there's an equipment shelter there, that there's a communication equipment that's on the ground that all this connects to. So I'd say it was a whole lot more when they came to attach to our water leg than just attaching a piece of equipment to the water leg, that they were starting from scratch at some point, that they had to do some kind of study sometime in the past, that they had to do some kind of investigation in the past, that they had to put together some kind of plan in the past, that there was startup costs in the past, that really the difference between this now and this then is we actually had something 150 foot up in the air that you don't have right now. And I understand there's extra cost to that. It's just hard for me to believe that it's a 40-year cost versus a 20-year cost. That's why I'm having heartburn, and I just think that the honest portion of this is that the city's going to be put in a predicament of this. Now, I'm not going to put a huge fight up on this because we need our customers, we need our constituents to have service, and we're not talking about acres and acres and acres at the air site, so I recognize all of that. But I just want us to all just be transparent and recognize, and I think that Scott's already answered some of this, that these companies have known for a number of years that this day was coming, and I'm just a little disappointed that I'm trying to be led to believe that all of a sudden that it's pertinent and that it's emergent that we've got to do this that nobody knew before December. This has been something in the works for a number of years, and so, Madam Chair, I'm prepared to move forward, but I want to move forward recognizing those areas.
Thank you, Councilor Perry. Any other, Councilor Foster?
Well, I also want to come to the understanding, though, that we're talking about a third-party gravity pad who's actually having the expense of building the towers and doing all this work, where before it was the actual server, the actual AT&T and Verizon that was actually getting business, and it was part of their business plan. And so I understand that gravity pad needs to have some guarantees, but I do want to clarify, it's not 90 days, it's 180 days. That's written on D. We don't have it's still, maybe too short a notice. One of the things I wonder, I know that Councilor Perry's hesitant because we're tying the city and future city councils into 40 years, but what if there was a compensation for the cost of building those towers built into that, and there was I don't know, it's in the afternoon and I've taught all day, so my mind's kind of gone, but maybe some kind of, I want to say annuity, but not annuity, it's the opposite in tax, building backwards on the cost of those buildings, so that in 20 years, if it's terminated, there'd be that the city would have to compensate a percentage of the cost of those towers. If that would be, that way it's not tying the hands of any future city councilors, and it's also guaranteeing gravity pad that they would get percentage of what they put into it. Yeah.
Councilor Foster, I think that would be problematic from a legal perspective, because the reason why we can do such a long lease from a legal perspective is that we're not spending in the future, we're getting money. But if we obligate the fiscal situation 20 years down the road to pay if there's a breach, I think that would violate the constitutional anti-debt provisions that we have.
Not a breach. If there's a breach, if there's a breach of contract, then we can terminate. But I'm saying if the city councilors decide to terminate, then there's a cost to that decision.
Right, and that would be a cost that would be incurred in a subsequent fiscal year. That's my point. And I don't know that we can do that. I would have to think very seriously about that, and I'm a little dubious that we can create, again, an obligation in a future fiscal year.
Well, but the other thing is what we're doing is tying the hands so they can't do anything. So that's,
Well, and that's a policy question. That's what I'm saying. You guys have to decide, do we want to obligate ourselves 40 years down the road, in that sense, with tying up this land? And that's a decision you guys can make. But from a legal perspective, a decision you cannot make is to obligate, funds in a future fiscal year.
Well, we wouldn't obligate, but it would be giving the option for them to obligate it.
According to Attorney General opinions, contingent debts are also obligations. Hence why we don't have attorney's fees and indemnities. Those are also may or may not happen, but because it could happen, according to the way that the debt provisions have been interpreted, that creates an unconstitutional situation.
All right. Interesting. But I am not opposed to, I understand that gravity pad's making an investment, and that having the whim of 10 counselors or 6 counselors is all it would take to counsel a lease, I could see where they'd question it, and I'd see where their bankers would question the backing it. So I'm not opposed to removing D and the termination.
To removing it?
Yeah, well, because otherwise, I don't see that isn't that what I'm hearing, that this?
If my understanding is that if D is not removed, then Gravity Pad would not sign this document.
Yes.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's a big one for us. Unfortunately, we can't move forward with that in there.
And I can understand why, because, I mean, I would think that your bankers would look at you twice before letting you sign into something and putting.
And just to respond to your idea about, we would call what you proposed an early buyout, and a different format where we're maybe not constructing a tower, it would almost work, but the problem is, if, let's say we agreed to that number on a sliding scale, which would be a reduced number over time, as you pointed out, because we'd have recovered more of our cost back. The problem is you have to get all of the 3 operators to agree also, because they won't agree to go on to a site that they can be removed from. So then you'd have 4 parties who would have to agree on basically 4 different sliding scale buyout numbers. And I've just been told recently by at least Verizon and AT&T that they won't do that sort of thing. So, this is on other transactions, but I don't think it would work, unfortunately.
So, I guess I will make a motion, see if it flies, to remove paragraph D from 38D from this lease agreement.
Is there a second to the motion to remove item 38D in the lease agreement?
Madam Chair, I think maybe, and Councilor Foster as well, speaking with both of y'all, I'm trying to determine with that or just sending the full council without recommendation, and then just letting full council make these determinations. I think that the full council should at least be brought up to and there again, I foresee all this probably being done, but I just would like for all of full council to hear and understand and recognize what this truly is. There any entertainment from y'all on that, or do you want to stay with your motion, Councilor Foster?
Well, I don't understand why we'd send this to full council when it wouldn't be something that Gravity Pad wouldn't agree to. And so, I mean, unless it's fixed, I mean, we can fix it at city council level, but even at that point, it has to be removed, or that's not something.
Okay. I guess for communication purposes, I will go ahead and second, because I think that's probably the proper way of doing it, since we're discussing. So I will second your motion to amend. I guess what I was saying by that, Councilor Foster, is let the amendment be made at full council, to be made. Full council hears and sees the document as originally presented, and then have the change made there. But if the desire is to make the change and then discuss it at full council, I don't think that I would keep that from going forward through that.
Councilor Perry, we could produce it in the doc packet as a red line that shows the strike through, if that would address your issue.
Just think the full council should be able to see it. So anyway, Madam Chair, I think that I'd sort of maybe like to hear your thoughts on this as well.
Thank you, Councilor Perry.
And I'm sorry, that came out the wrong way, I apologize. I guess what I'm saying is I feel like I've talked enough, and which I've talked too much, and it's time for me just to be quiet and just to listen. There's a better way of saying it.
No problem, no problem. I think if it's a deal breaker, after all that we've been through, that I would not be opposed to leaving it in. Did I say that right? It was a double negative?
Taking it out or leaving it in? Which one do you want to do?
I am fine with leaving it in.
The motion is to take it out,
Yes.
but you want to leave it in. Okay, just to
Yes.
clarify.
Is there any further discussion from the committee? Anything else from staff? Mr. Miley?
No, I won't see further. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. All right, we have a motion. I'm going to call for a roll call vote on this one, if you don't mind, Amalia. The motion is to remove 38D from the lease agreement. So if we could have a roll call vote.
Counselor Stubbs?
No.
Counselor Perry?
Yes.
Counselor Foster?
Yes.
Okay, so the vote is 2-1. So we will be redlining this item 38D on the lease agreement that will go to full council, and we'll have a further discussion there. It will go with no recommendation, or do we?
You haven't, we haven't had a motion yet on that? I don't think so.
Oh, no, not on the full,
Yeah.
thank you. No, we haven't, have we? Not on the full agreement. Okay, so now, I guess I need a motion on the full awarding of the communications tower lease to Gravity Pad Towers as amended. No, I guess it was amended.
Yes.
Well, as amended, and then also the grammatical and the numbering errors, correct? Do we need to add that to the motion, or?
I think that unless there's an objection, that is a consensus.
Yeah.
All right,
I
thanks.
agree.
All right, Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to send to full council for approval the telecommunication tower lease to Gravity Pad Towers LLC consisting of 2,500 square feet at the Roswell Air Center. And let's see, the lease is a 2-year lease option, and if the option is exercised, a term of 5 years from the commencement date with the option of a renewed 7 additional 5-year terms for the amount of initially for $1,020 monthly and 20% of the rent received from the subleases,
Other terms and conditions.
with all other terms and conditions of the lease.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I will second.
Thank you. So the motion is to send to full council, considering all the terms and conditions, including the one amendment and any other grammatical kinds of changes that we've
To
made.
clarify, is that with or without a recommendation?
It was approval.
Okay,
So it is with a recommendation.
with a recommendation, okay.
All those in favor of the main motion, then please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye with explanation.
And opposed, no. So the motion carries at a vote of 2-1, and Counselor Perry has an explanation. Go ahead.
Madam Chair, I thank you for that. I don't want to completely hold this from full council's ability to hear, just because I still have heartburn and concerns and reservations. I just want to say that my agreement to send this to full council does not reflect necessarily how I will or can vote at full council, nor does it hold me to other changes that could potentially be brought forth at the meeting.
Thank you. So, Mr. Miley, you get to join us one more time on April 8th.
Happy to.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Oh, I also wanted to tell you how much I appreciate having all of the additional sheets here that were typically, had not been included before, but now will go in the council packet. So we'll all be able to see what you're talking about. Thank you for that.
Certainly. No problem.
I have no other business, but I think Scott may have somebody to introduce to us.
I do. So I promised last week that I would introduce all my new people, and because of delays that were unavoidable, Denise was not able to make it last week. But with that said, we have filled the property and contracts coordinator position for the airport with Denise Garcia, whom I believe you know.
I do.
And I would like to have her come up for just a second and say hi.
Hello, and thank you for having me here. I am from Roswell. I'm familiar with the community. I worked with the school district for 15 years and was involved in a lot of community events that we have, so I'm excited to come back and work with the City Air Center and see what I can do to help out. If anyone has any questions, feel free to call me, and thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, welcome to the Art Center.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Nope. Thank you.
That's it. Are you full now?
I think so, for the moment. I won't have any more wishes for a little while.
Okay. Thank you very
All right.
much.
You bet.
Good team. Are there any other questions or comments or discussion from anyone? Hearing none, I guess we're adjourned at whatever time it is, 4:50. Thank you all.
Thank you.